Hey everyone. I'm James, I'm 32, and I once abandoned my entire family in the middle of a crowded airport to save my own sanity. Before I tell you about the explosive confrontation that changed everything, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can travel. Alright, so picture this. It's 7 a.m. at LAX. The air is thick with the smell of coffee, floor cleaner, and the low-grade anxiety that blankets every airport. I'm standing a few feet back, just watching them. My family, my dad, Richard, is nervously checking his boarding pass for the 10th time. My mom, Helen, is trying to wrangle my two nephews, Leo and Noah, who are using a luggage cart as a battering ram. And then there's my sister, Clara, the golden child, looking effortlessly perfect even at this hour, directing her husband, David, on how to arrange their 5 oversized suitcases. They were all buzzing with excitement for our family vacation. A trip to a screaming, kid-friendly, all-inclusive resort in Mexico that I was paying for. Well, most of it. It was supposed to be my vacation, my escape. But like everything else in my life, it had been absorbed into the orbit of Planet Clara. James, honey, could you grab the boys a bottle of water? They're getting fussy. My mom called out, not even looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on Clara, as always. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. For weeks, I had listened to them plan my vacation around Clara's schedule, her kids' nap times, her husband's desire for a golf course. My own requests for a quiet beach or a nice restaurant were dismissed with a wave of the hand. Oh, James, you can do that anytime. This is about the kids. It's about family. But it was never about family. It was always about Clara. I looked at their excited faces, completely oblivious. They saw me as a utility, a wallet, a babysitter, an extra pair of hands. They didn't see me, not the real me. And in that moment, a strange calm washed over me. The frantic, pounding heart I'd been living with for days suddenly went still. It was the calm of a decision finally made. I pulled out my phone. On the screen was a single boarding pass. My real boarding pass. Destination: Costa Rica. A flight leaving from a different terminal in 1 hour. Without a word, I turned my back on them. I slipped through the throng of travelers, my own single carry-on bag feeling impossibly light. I didn't look back. I just walked. Every step felt like I was breaking a chain. I could feel their voices fading behind me, replaced by the thrum of my own blood in my ears. I reached the terminal shuttle, stepped on, and as it pulled away, I took my phone, turned it off, and shoved it deep into my bag. The plane to Costa Rica lifted off the runway, and I watched the sprawling chaos of Los Angeles shrink below. I was leaving it all behind. The noise, the expectations, the crushing weight of being the forgotten son. I had no idea what would happen when I landed, or when I eventually had to turn my phone back on. All I knew was that for the first time in my life, I was flying free. But to understand why I had to take such a drastic step, we have to go back. Way back. Growing up, my life was lived in the shadow of a monument named Clara. Our house wasn't just a home. It was a shrine to her. The walls were a gallery of her achievements. Ballet trophies, debate team plaques, her framed acceptance letter to a prestigious East Coast university. Every family dinner revolved around her latest triumph. My achievements, if they were noticed at all, were treated like amusing little anecdotes. I think the first time I truly understood the dynamic, really understood it, was on my 10th birthday. I remember waking up buzzing with the kind of electric excitement only a 10-year-old can feel. I ran downstairs expecting, pancakes? A banner? At least a happy birthday, son. Instead, I found my parents in a flurry of activity. My dad was on the phone, speaking in his serious business voice, while my mom was ironing Clara's best blouse. The air smelled like burnt toast and hairspray. Mom? Dad? I asked, my voice small. My mom glanced over, a look of mild irritation on her face. Not now, James. Clara has her big interview for the magnet high school today. This is important. My 10th birthday. And it was just an inconvenience. The entire day was dedicated to Clara. Driving her to the interview, waiting for her, taking her out for a celebration lunch afterward. I just tagged along, a silent ghost in the back seat of the family minivan. That evening, as a clear afterthought, my mom pulled a small, slightly squashed cake box out of the fridge. "Here," she said, placing it in front of me. I opened it. It was a single, lonely slice of tiramisu. I recognized it immediately. It was leftover from Clara's celebratory lunch. "We were just so busy today," my mom said, not meeting my eyes. "Make a wish." I stared at the single, sad little candle drooping in the mascarpone. I didn't make a wish. What was the point? I already knew that even the universe's magic was probably being redirected to ensure Clara's continued success. This pattern repeated itself endlessly. When I won first place in a citywide art competition in middle school, the award ceremony was on the same day my parents had to drive Clara to a college tour 3 states away. They didn't even hesitate. "We're so proud of you, sweetie," my mom said over the phone that night, her voice distant. "Tell us all about it when we get back." They never asked. I wore Clara's hand-me-downs, not just clothes but interests. When I showed a flicker of interest in music, my parents unearthed Clara's old violin from the attic. She tried it for 6 months when she was 15 before declaring it unrefined. It was a full-sized violin. I was 12. It was like trying to hug a cello. When I begged for one that actually fit me, my mom sighed that long, weary sigh she reserved exclusively for my unreasonable requests. "James, we simply can't afford a new violin right now," she said, sorting through bills at the kitchen table. "We've already spent so much on Clara's piano lessons this year. You have to understand, her talent is exceptional. So I learned to play on a violin that was too big, it sounded awkward and strained, just like me. I learned to make myself smaller, to want less, to expect nothing. It was the only way to survive in the shadow of the golden child. Little did I know this was just the training ground. The real disregard was yet to come. The gap between Clara and me became a chasm when we got to college. For Clara, there was no question. She would attend her dream school, a private liberal arts college that cost more per year than our car. My parents beamed with pride. They took out loans, dipped into their retirement savings, and held fundraisers with the extended family. It was a community project, the Get Clara an Ivy League Adjacent Education Fund. For years later, it was my turn. I'd worked hard in high school. My grades were solid, my SAT scores were good. I got into a great state university, a place I was genuinely excited about. I presented my acceptance letter to my parents, expecting a similar, if slightly less grand, display of support. What I got was a sit-down at the kitchen table that felt more like a parole hearing. My dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Son, we're very proud of you. We really are. But we need to be realistic about finances." My mom jumped in, her voice taking on that gentle, placating tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news. "We're still paying off the loans we took out for Clara's tuition, James. Her education was, well, it was an investment. We just don't have that kind of money available again." An investment. That one word hit me like a punch to the gut. Her future was an investment. Mine was an expense to be managed. The deal they offered was this. They would pay for half of my tuition. The other half, plus room, board, books, and any semblance of a social life, was on me. "It'll build character," my dad said with a weak smile, as if saddling your kid with crippling debt was a form of enlightened parenting. So, while Clara was joining sororities and going on spring break trips to Europe, I was working 2 soul-crushing part-time jobs. I was a barista at 6 a.m., smelling of burnt coffee and regret, and a stock boy at a grocery store until midnight, my back aching and my hands raw. I lived on instant ramen and free coffee from my morning shift. I remember seeing pictures of Clara on a yacht during a summer internship her parents had helped her get through a friend. That same day, I had sold my precious comic book collection, the one thing that was truly mine, to pay for a chemistry textbook. The ultimate irony was when I graduated. With honors, I might add. I was the first person in our immediate family to graduate with a degree in finance, a practical degree that led to a good job offer right away. I'd done it almost entirely on my own. I thought, just for a moment, that this would finally be the thing that earned their respect. At my graduation party, A small affair in our backyard with lukewarm hot dogs. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. "See, James?" he said a little too loudly. "We were right. Making you pay your own way taught you the value of $1. You turned out just fine." He said it like he'd done me a favor. Like the sleepless nights, the constant stress, the missed opportunities were all part of some master plan for my benefit. They took my struggle and reframed it as their success. And I just stood there, diploma in hand, feeling more alone than ever. I was just fine, but I wasn't their investment. I was just the one who was expected to manage. That role, I would soon learn, was for life. Clara met David in her late 20s, a man who looked great on paper. Good family, decent job, charming smile. Their wedding was the social event of the decade, at least according to my mother. For an entire year, our family life was consumed by it. Guest lists, catering decisions, floral arrangements. It was a constant storm of trivialities treated with the gravity of international peace talks. Naturally, my parents decided to take out a second mortgage on their house to fund the perfect day for their perfect daughter. A lavish affair with 300 guests, a string quartet, and an ice sculpture of a swan. My contribution. I was strong-armed into being the default wedding planner, errand boy, and emotional support animal. "James, can you pick up the bridesmaid dresses? I'm just swamped," Clara would call and say. "James, can you deal with the caterer? They're being impossible." "James, can you handle David's drunken uncle? He's hitting on the photographer." When I finally, gently, tried to complain about the pressure, my mother fixed me with a look of profound disappointment. "Don't be so selfish, James. This is your sister's special day. A family is supposed to sacrifice for each other." It was a beautiful wedding. Clara was a radiant bride. As I stood there, watching her dance with our father, I felt a familiar pang. It wasn't jealousy. It was resignation. The word sacrifice in our family was a one-way street, and all the traffic flowed directly to Clara. A few years later, the twins, Leo and Noah, arrived. They were cute kids, and for a while it was nice. But soon after their birth, my role in the family solidified into something new and inescapable. The default, on-call, unpaid nanny. It started innocently enough. "James, can you watch the boys for an hour? David and I just need to run to the store." An hour would turn into 3. A Saturday afternoon would become an entire weekend. They never asked if I had plans. They just assumed I didn't, or if I did, that they weren't as important. My apartment, my one sanctuary, became a satellite daycare center. My weekends, my only time to decompress from a stressful work week, were filled with diapers, cartoons, and the endless, sticky-fingered chaos of 2 toddlers. The breaking point for me happened on a Tuesday. I had a big date, one I was actually excited about. It was with a woman from work I'd had a crush on for months. I'd made reservations at a nice restaurant. I was showered, dressed, and about to head out the door when my phone rang. It was Clara, her voice frantic. "James, thank God you picked up. David's car won't start, and I have a yoga class I absolutely cannot miss. It's a crisis. I need you to come over right now." "Clara, I can't," I said, my heart sinking. "I have plans. Big plans." Silence. Then a sniffle. The weaponized waterworks were coming. "You have plans?" she said, her voice dripping with wounded disbelief. "More important than your family? More important than your sister, who is clearly having a panic attack right now?" I ended up canceling my date. As I sat on Clara's floor, building a tower of blocks with 2 toddlers while she was off finding her inner peace, I felt something inside me just break. It was a quiet snap. I realized they weren't just taking my time and my money anymore. They were taking my life. And I was letting them. That was the night I knew something had to change, and it had to change soon. 4 years at my firm, I'd been grinding. I was the first one in, the last one out. I took on the projects no one else wanted. I built a reputation for being reliable, sharp, and hungry. And finally, it was about to pay off. My boss, Mr. Davidson, the CEO of the company, called me into his office. It was a big deal. The kind of meeting that made your palms sweat. He was a man of few words, known for his cut-to-the-chase demeanor. He gestured for me to sit down, his face unreadable. "James," he began, "I've been watching you. Your work on the Henderson account was exceptional. You saved us from a major loss." I just nodded, trying to keep my breathing even. "We're restructuring the West Coast division," he continued, leaning forward. "We need a new regional manager, someone with initiative, someone who can handle pressure. The board and I agree, that person is you." My mind went blank. Regional manager. It was a massive promotion. A huge salary increase, a company car, a corner office. It was everything I had been working for. "The job will require a lot of travel," he warned. "You'll be on the road at least 2 weeks out of every month. It's a big commitment, but the reward is substantial. The position is yours if you want it." I walked out of his office in a daze, my feet barely touching the floor. I felt seen, valued. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my hard work actually mattered. I couldn't wait to tell my family. I imagined them being proud, celebrating with me. For once, the spotlight would be on my success. That Sunday, at our obligatory family dinner, I waited for a lull in the conversation, which, as usual, was about Clara's new landscaping. "I have some news," I announced, my voice trembling slightly with excitement. Everyone turned to look at me. "Mr. Davidson offered me a promotion today. I'm going to be the new regional manager." There was a beat of silence. My dad was the first to speak. "Regional manager? What's the salary on a position like that?" Before I could answer, my mother's brow furrowed in concern. But her concern wasn't for me. "Wait," she said, her eyes darting towards Clara. "You said there would be a lot of travel, right? What about the twins? Who's going to help Clara with the boys if you're gone all the time?" The air went out of the room. My excitement evaporated, replaced by a familiar, icy dread. Clara jumped in, her face a mask of theatrical worry. "Oh, James, you can't take that job. That's not fair. David and I rely on you. The boys adore their Uncle James. It would break their little hearts." I looked around the table. Not a single person had said, "Congratulations." Not one person looked proud. They looked inconvenienced. My greatest professional achievement was, to them, a logistical problem for Clara's childcare schedule. My father sealed the deal. He put down his fork and looked at me with that disappointed expression he'd perfected over the years. "Family has to be the priority, James. This promotion sounds selfish. You need to think about what's best for everyone, not just yourself." I sat there, speechless, the taste of ashes in my mouth. They hadn't just dismissed my success. They had tried to make me feel guilty for it. That night, I realized they didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me to stay right where I was, available, useful, and forever in second place. The week after the disastrous promotion dinner was one of the worst of my life. The tension with my family was suffocating. Clara would call and leave these long, rambling voicemails about how stressed she was, a clear attempt to guilt me into turning down the job. My mother would send me texts with pictures of the twins, captioned, "Look who's missing their favorite uncle." It was a full-court press of emotional manipulation. I was burning out fast. I needed to get away. I needed space to think, to breathe air that wasn't saturated with their expectations. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I planned something just for myself. I spent hours online, researching. I found a small, boutique hotel on a quiet stretch of beach in Mexico. No kids' clubs, no water slides, just sand, sun, and silence. I booked a flight and a room for 10 days. It was my secret, my lifeline. My mistake was mentioning it. It was a moment of weakness. At the next Sunday dinner, feeling cornered, I blurted it out. "I'm thinking of taking a vacation soon, just to get away and clear my head." My mother's eyes lit up, but not for me. "A vacation? What a wonderful idea!" she exclaimed. Then she turned to Clara. "Honey, you and David have been saying you need a break. This is perfect. We can all go together." It was like watching a shark frenzy. Before I could even protest, the hijacking was in full swing. "Oh my God, yes," Clara squealed, pulling out her phone. "But that little hotel you mentioned sounds boring, James. We need a place with a good kids' pool. Look at this one. The Royalton Grand. It has a water park and 7 restaurants." My dad chimed in. "Good thinking, Clara. We'll need a family suite. James, your room will probably be cheaper since you're by yourself. You won't mind chipping in a bit extra for our room, will you? For the grandkids, you know?" Within 10 minutes, my quiet, restorative solo trip had morphed into a chaotic, week-long family ordeal at a resort designed for screaming children. They planned activities around the twins' nap schedules. They talked about how I could watch the boys in the evening so Clara and David could have some romantic time. They had completely, and without a single shred of self-awareness, taken over my escape and turned it into another job for me. I just sat there, numb. I tried to protest once. "You know, I was really looking forward to being alone." My mom cut me off with a sad smile. "Oh, James, nobody wants to be alone on vacation. It's so much more fun with family." As I listened to them cheerfully spend my money and plan my time, a cold, hard resolve began to form in my chest. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just nodded and smiled. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "Sounds great." But inside, I was making a different set of plans. They wanted to hijack my vacation? Fine. Let them. They could have their family trip. But I wouldn't be on it. That was when I had my first conversation with my uncle, my mom's brother, Robert. He'd always been the cool uncle, the one who seemed to understand me. I called him that night, venting my frustration. He listened patiently. "That's rough, kid," he said. "Your mom and sister, they can be a lot. You deserve a break." His sympathy felt like a balm. It made me feel like I wasn't crazy. But then, an hour later, I got a text from my mom. "Just spoke to Robert. He said you're feeling down. Don't worry, sweetie. This family vacation will be just what you need to cheer up. Family is the most important thing." My blood ran cold. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. My own uncle. The one person I thought was in my corner was just a spy, a backchannel to my mother. The feeling of betrayal was suffocating. I realized then, with chilling clarity, that I was completely and utterly on my own. The betrayal by Uncle Robert was the final push I needed. It severed the last thread of hope that I could reason with them or find an ally within the family. If I wanted my life back, I had to take it. No announcements, no negotiations. Just action. That night, I went into full covert ops mode. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark apartment. The first thing I did was cancel the hotel reservation at the loud, obnoxious Royalton Grand. Thankfully, I was within the free cancellation window. I got my deposit back immediately. Then the real planning began. Where would I go? I wanted somewhere far away, somewhere beautiful, somewhere they would never think to look. My eyes scanned a map of the world. Europe felt too predictable. Asia felt too far. Then I saw it. A green jewel in Central America. Costa Rica. The land of pura vida. The pure life. It was perfect. I found a small, secluded eco-lodge nestled in the rainforest. A short walk from a volcanic sand beach. The pictures showed monkeys in the trees and hammocks overlooking the ocean. It was the antithesis of the family resort from hell. I booked it. Then I booked a one-way flight from LAX, leaving on the same day as the family's flight to Mexico, but from a different terminal. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. At work, I put in my official vacation request for the dates of the Mexico trip, but I told my close friend and colleague, Mark, the truth. Mark was the only person on the planet who knew my real plan. He'd seen how my family treated me for years. "Dude, it's about time," he said when I told him. "You need this. I'll cover for you if anyone asks." His unwavering support was the one thing that kept my nerve from failing. I started preparing. I photocopied my passport and important documents. I took out a significant amount of cash, enough to last me a while if they somehow managed to freeze my bank account in a fit of rage. A paranoid thought, maybe, but I wasn't taking any chances. At home, I played the part of the dutiful son and brother. I get calls from Clara. Hey, did you remember to buy the reef-safe sunscreen for the boys? The one I sent you the link for. Yep, already got it. I'd lie, looking at the Costa Rican travel guide on my desk. During this time, I also started paying more attention to Sarah, a colleague who was also in the running for the promotion. She'd become overly friendly lately, always asking about my family, my vacation plans. Oh, a big family trip? How wonderful! She'd say with a bright, fake smile. You must be so excited to get away from the stress of this promotion. I noticed her glancing at my computer screen once when I was looking at flights. I chalked it up to office rivalry, but a small alarm bell went off in my head. I became more careful. The day before the trip, my mom called. James, don't forget to pack your nice shirt. We're planning a special family dinner for our first night to celebrate us all being together. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom, I said, as I packed a pair of hiking boots and mosquito repellent into my single, unassuming backpack. The lie felt surprisingly easy. The guilt I expected to feel was absent, replaced by a thrilling, terrifying sense of impending freedom. I was a spy in my own life, counting down the hours to my extraction. The moment the plane to Costa Rica broke through the clouds, it was like a physical weight lifted off my shoulders. The constant, low-humming anxiety that had been my companion for years simply vanished. I was anonymous. I was free. Landing in San Jose was a sensory explosion. The air was warm and humid, thick with the scent of rain and tropical flowers. The sounds were different. The lilting rhythm of Spanish, the chatter of exotic birds. It was a different world. A world where I wasn't Clara's brother or the unpaid nanny. I was just James. The eco-lodge was even better than the pictures. My cabin was a simple wooden structure on stilts, with a porch that looked directly out into the dense, vibrant rainforest. On my first morning, I was woken up not by an alarm clock, but by the guttural roar of howler monkeys in the canopy. I made a cup of strong, local coffee and sat on my porch, watching a family of capuchin monkeys swing through the trees. I did absolutely nothing, and it was glorious. For the first 5 days, I kept my phone off, tucked away at the bottom of my backpack. It was a digital detox, a severing of the electronic leash that had tied me to my family's demands. I walked for miles on black sand beaches, the powerful Pacific waves crashing beside me. I hiked through the jungle, marveling at iridescent blue butterflies and sloths hanging lazily from branches. I ate fresh fish and tropical fruit at a small beachside shack, making clumsy conversation with the friendly locals. One afternoon, while reading in a hammock, an older man with a kind, weathered face struck up a conversation. His name was Dr. Evans, a retired psychiatrist from Chicago who spent his winters here. We talked for hours. I didn't unload my whole family saga on him, but I told him I was on a much-needed solo trip to escape from some heavy family obligations. He listened patiently, then said something that stuck with me. You know, he said, looking out at the ocean, a family is supposed to be a safe harbor, not a cage. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to remind them where the cage door is. His words resonated deep within me. He didn't know the specifics, but he understood the core of it. I wasn't just running away. I was trying to find the door. I started to feel like myself again. A version of myself I hadn't met in years. I was calmer, more confident. I even went on a date with a woman I met on a guided nature tour, a traveler from Australia. We had a wonderful dinner, talking and laughing without any agenda or expectation. It was just normal, easy. On the 5th day, I knew I couldn't put it off forever. I had to face the music. I took a deep breath, walked to a spot on the beach with a good signal, and prepared to re-enter the storm. I knew it would be bad, but for the first time I felt ready to handle it. I had the memory of the monkeys, the sound of the waves, and the words of a wise stranger to anchor me. I had myself. I sat on a smooth, sun-warmed log, the ocean breeze cool on my skin, and powered on my phone. It was a digital explosion. The screen lit up and immediately began to vibrate. A frantic, non-stop buzzing in my hand as a week's worth of notifications flooded in. It was like holding a hornet's nest. 178 text messages, 94 missed calls, 42 voicemails. My thumb hovered over the screen, a sense of dread mixing with my newfound calm. I opened the messages. It was a chronological descent into madness. The first few were from the airport. Mom, James? Where are you? The flight is boarding. Clara, James, this isn't funny. Get to the gate now. The boys are asking for you. Dad. Son, if this is some kind of joke, it's in very poor taste. Your mother is worried sick. Then the anger started. Clara, I cannot believe you did this. You abandoned us. You abandoned your nephews. What is wrong with you? Clara, we missed the flight because we were looking for you. Do you know how much it's going to cost to rebook? This is coming out of your share of the inheritance. I swear to God. Then came the guilt trips from my mother. Mom, James, please just call me. I'm so worried. Are you hurt? Are you in trouble? I can't sleep. My baby boy, where are you? Mom, I don't know what we did to deserve this. We gave you everything. Your sister is in tears. The voicemails were even worse. A cacophony of anger, fake tears, and demands. Clara's voice was shrill with rage. My father's was thick with disappointment. My mother's was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Choked sobs and whispers of, "How could you do this to your family?" I listened to a few seconds of each before deleting them. The man who had boarded that plane 5 days ago would have been crippled by this. He would have felt an overwhelming urge to apologize, to fix it, to make it all go away. But I wasn't that man anymore. I scrolled through the wall of text, the accusations, the drama, and I felt nothing. Not guilt, not fear, just a profound, quiet sadness for them, for how little they knew me. I closed the messages, opened a new one, and addressed it to the family group chat. I typed out a single, simple message. I am safe and am having a much-needed vacation. I will be in touch when I return. Please respect my space until then. I hit send. Then, I turned the phone off again and walked back toward the jungle, the sound of the waves washing away their digital noise. The storm had hit, but I was in the eye of it, and I was holding steady. My 10 days in Costa Rica felt like a lifetime. When I finally boarded the plane back to LA, I was a different person. The tan on my skin was nothing compared to the new armor around my soul. But I knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't go home. My first stop was not my apartment, but a generic hotel near the airport. I needed a neutral ground, a place to decompress and strategize. My apartment, I knew, would no longer be a safe space. It would be the first place they'd look. The next morning, I executed my plan. I called a 24-hour locksmith and had the locks on my apartment changed. Then I went to work. I updated my emergency contact information, removing my parents and replacing them with my friend, Mark. Felt clinical, cold, but necessary. I was building a fortress brick by brick. Predictably, they found out I was back through social media. Mark had posted a picture of us grabbing a beer, welcoming me home. Within an hour, my phone, which I had cautiously turned back on, started ringing. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then Clara. Then my dad. The voicemails were a mix of relief and fury. "You're back and you didn't even tell us?" Clara shrieked. "We've been worried sick, and you're out drinking beers?" The final phase of my plan was to arrange a meeting. I wouldn't let them ambush me at my home or my office. I was choosing the time, the place. I sent a text to the family group chat. "I will meet you all to talk. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. The Grove Cafe. We will discuss this there and only there." The Grove Cafe was a deliberate choice. It was public, always busy. It was a place where shouting and emotional theatrics would be frowned upon. It was neutral territory. I arrived 15 minutes early the next day. I chose a table in the corner, one with a clear view of the entrance but also with a wall at my back. I felt like a general surveying a battlefield. I ordered a black coffee and waited. They arrived together, a united front. My dad, my mom, Clara, and her husband, David. They looked exhausted and angry. Their faces were a mixture of righteous indignation and wounded pride. They sat down without a word, the silence thick with accusation. My mom was the first to break, her voice trembling. "James, how could you? I needed a break," I said calmly, my voice even. "A break? You call humiliating us, abandoning your family, a break?" Clara snapped, her eyes flashing. David put a supposedly comforting hand on her arm, but he was glaring at me over her head. He looked more stressed than anyone. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his jaw was clenched tight. At the time, I just thought he was angry on his wife's behalf. I had no idea it was so much more than that. The conversation began its predictable, toxic dance. They accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, cruel. I let them talk, sipping my coffee, refusing to take the bait. And as this drama unfolded, I noticed a familiar figure sitting alone a few tables away, partially hidden by a potted plant. It was Mrs. Gable, our old neighbor from the street I grew up on. A sweet, slightly nosy woman who had known our family for 30 years. She gave me a small, discreet wave. I nodded back. I had no idea that her presence there, completely by chance, was about to change everything. She was about to become the accidental witness to the implosion of the family secret. The barrage of accusations continued. I was selfish. I was immature. I had no idea what real responsibility was. Responsibility, I finally said, my voice dangerously low. The calmness I had cultivated was beginning to fray. "You want to talk about responsibility? For the last 5 years, my only responsibility has been you. All of you. That's not fair," my mother cried. "We're family. Is it family to turn my life into your personal convenience store?" I shot back, my voice rising. "I am your chauffeur, your handyman, your ATM, and your free nanny. When was the last time any of you asked me how I was doing? When was the last time my success was celebrated instead of being treated like a scheduling conflict for Clara?" The raw truth of my words hung in the air, silencing them for a moment. David, my brother-in-law, was the one who reignited the fire. He scoffed, leaning forward with a sneer. "Oh, boo-hoo, you think you have it so tough? You have no idea what real pressure is. You don't have kids. You don't have a business to run. You don't understand the kind of burdens we carry." And that's when I snapped. The years of resentment, of being minimized and dismissed, boiled over. Burdens? You want to talk about burdens, David? Let's talk about the burden of your business. I didn't even know what I was saying. The words were just pouring out, fueled by pure instinct and anger. But I must have struck a nerve. A deep one. David's face went pale. Clara looked at him, then at me, her eyes wide with panic. My mother saw the shift and immediately jumped in to defend her golden daughter's husband. "James, that is enough. You will not speak to David that way. We have all made sacrifices. We have done things for this family you couldn't possibly understand." "What things?" I pressed, my eyes locked on hers. "What sacrifices? Things you don't need to know about," she retorted, her voice cracking. "No, I think I do," I insisted. "I think after everything, I deserve to know why my entire life has to be put on hold to serve yours." The pressure in the air was immense. David was squirming. Clara looked like she was about to be sick. My father was just staring at the table, his face ashen. And then my mother, in a desperate, last-ditch attempt to guilt me into submission, screamed the words that would bring the entire house of cards crashing down. "We did it for your sister," she shrieked, tears streaming down her face, her voice loud enough to turn heads across the cafe. "We did it all for her. David's company is failing. It's been failing for years. We had to help them." Silence. A deafening, absolute silence. Every lie, every manipulation, every guilt trip suddenly clicked into place. It all made a horrifying kind of sense. My mother slapped a hand over her own mouth, realizing what she'd done. Clara let out a choked sob, burying her face in her hands. David looked like he'd been physically struck, and I just stared at them. The truth was out, not just whispered, but screamed in a public cafe. my promotion, my salary, my availability. It wasn't about family. It was never about love or support. I was their backup plan, their financial safety net, their walking, talking insurance policy for the golden child's failed life. I glanced over at Mrs. Gable's table. Her coffee cup was frozen halfway to her lips. Her eyes were wide with shock. She had heard every single word. The family secret wasn't a secret anymore. It was a public spectacle. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally got back in the driver's seat of my own life. Thank you for sticking with me to this point. You guys are amazing. Do me a huge favor and hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is genuinely the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The confession hung in the air, thick and toxic. For a long moment, nobody moved. The bustling noise of the cafe seemed to fade into a distant buzz. It was just the 5 of us, frozen in the wreckage of my mother's words. Clara was the first to break. She started crying, but these weren't the crocodile tears I was used to. These were harsh, ugly sobs of pure humiliation. Her perfect facade had been shattered in the most public way imaginable. I looked at my parents. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the grains of sugar on the table as if they held the secrets to the universe. My mother looked utterly broken, her face streaked with mascara, a look of horrified regret in her eyes. I finally found my voice. It was quiet, steady, and colder than I had ever heard it before. So that's it, I said, not as a question but as a statement. That's what this has all been about. The constant need for me to be nearby, the panic when I got a promotion. You weren't afraid of losing a son or a brother. You were afraid of losing your investment. It wasn't like that, James. My father mumbled, his voice hoarse. Don't. I cut him off, holding up a hand. Don't you dare lie to me again. Not now. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Every eye in that cafe was on us, but I didn't care anymore. I looked directly at my parents, then at Clara and David. I am not your retirement plan. I am not your emergency fund. And I am not the life raft for your sinking ship. I said, each word precise and sharp. The Bank of James is officially closed. My time, my money, my life are my own now. You need to figure out your own problems. All of you. I laid a $20 bill on the table to cover my coffee. This is the last thing I'm paying for. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I walked with a straight back and a steady pace. As I passed Mrs. Gable's table, she reached out and gently touched my arm. She looked me in the eye and gave a small, sad, but supportive nod. You did the right thing, dear, she whispered. That small act of validation from a near stranger meant more to me in that moment than a lifetime of hollow I love yous from my own family. I walked out of that cafe and into the bright California sun. I didn't look back. I didn't know what they would do, and for the first time in my life I truly didn't care. I felt a profound sense of loss, like an amputation. It hurt, but I also felt the clean, sharp relief of a limb being freed from a trap. The dead weight was gone. The silence that followed was absolute. For 2 weeks, my phone didn't ring. No texts, no voicemails, no emails. It was eerie, like the calm after a nuclear bomb. The quiet was both a relief and a source of strange anxiety. Had I destroyed my family? Or had I just exposed something that was already broken beyond repair? I threw myself into my work. I officially accepted the promotion. The travel, the new responsibilities, it was a welcome distraction. My new, larger salary went directly into my own accounts, untouched by family emergencies. I was building my own life on my own terms. The first crack in the silence came from an unexpected source. Uncle Robert. He called me one evening, his voice hesitant. James? It's your uncle. I know, I said, my voice flat. He sighed heavily. Look, kid, I know I messed up. I was trying to play peacemaker, and I just made things worse. Your mother, she puts a lot of pressure on people. It's no excuse, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in it. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more than I'd ever gotten from my parents. "What do you want, Robert?" I asked. "Just to let you know what's happening," he said quietly. "It's not good. Your parents are putting the house up for sale. The one you grew up in. They can't afford the mortgage payments anymore. Not after everything they gave to David." The news hit me harder than I expected. That house was my childhood. "And Clara?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "They lost their house too," he said. "The bank foreclosed. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. David's looking for a job. A real one this time." I thanked him for the information and hung up. I sat in my quiet, clean apartment, the one they didn't have a key to, and felt a wave of complicated emotions. There was no triumph, no "I told you so," just a deep, aching sadness for the mess they had made. Then, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number I almost didn't recognize. It was Clara. One line. 3 words. "I am so sorry." It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a fix. But it was a start. A tremor in the frozen landscape of our family. 6 months can change everything. I moved. I got a new apartment in a different part of the city. A place with no memories attached. No ghosts in the hallways. It was smaller than my old place, but it felt bigger because it was entirely mine. The walls were decorated with my own art. My own photos of Costa Rica. Not a single plaque or trophy belonging to Clara. My new job was demanding but incredibly rewarding. I was good at it. Traveling for work, which my family had painted as a selfish act of abandonment, turned out to be something I loved. It opened up my world. I saw new cities, met new people, and proved to myself that I could not only survive but thrive on my own. I started saying yes to things. I joined a hiking club and spent my weekends exploring the mountains around LA. I took a pottery class, discovering a clumsy but satisfying joy in creating something with my own hands. I was building a life, not just a career. A life filled with my own interests, my own friends. The silence from my family had morphed into a tentative, awkward series of communications. My mom would send me recipes. My dad would text me sports scores. They were small, feeble attempts to bridge the chasm I had created. I responded politely but kept my distance. The trust, once shattered, couldn't be glued back together overnight. The biggest surprise was Clara. Her short, apologetic text had been followed by a long, rambling email a month later. She didn't make excuses. She admitted her entitlement, her selfishness, her fear of failure. She told me how losing everything had forced her to see the world, and herself, differently. She was working part-time as a receptionist. David was driving for a rideshare service. It was a humbling, brutal fall from grace. I didn't rush to fix things for her. I knew that would be falling back into the old pattern. But I did respond. I told her I was glad she was okay. I told her I hoped she would find her footing. It was a relationship reset to 0. We were no longer the golden child and the forgotten son. We were just 2 adults trying to figure things out. One afternoon, I got a call from reception at my office. "Mr. Davidson, there's a Richard here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was my father. He had never, not once, come to my place of work. I took a deep breath and told them to send him up. He walked into my large, new office, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. He looked around at the view, the desk, the symbols of my success. This is really something, James," he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for help. He just stood there, looking at me. "I came here to say 2 things," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "First, I am so incredibly proud of you. I know I never said it, but I am. And second, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was a terrible father to you. I let my fear for your sister blind me to what a wonderful man my son had become. I failed you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Tears welled up in my eyes. It was the one thing I had longed to hear my entire life. And it had finally come. My father's apology was like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was still rusted shut. We sat in my office, the city skyline spread out behind him, and we talked. Really talked for the first time in decades. He told me everything. The full story of David's financial disaster. It was worse than I thought. Bad investments, secret credit card debt, a business that was never profitable. He and my mom had poured their life savings, their retirement, everything, into that black hole, all while David and Clara maintained the illusion of a perfect life. We were so scared, he confessed, his voice cracking. We were terrified of her failing, of what people would say. We thought if we could just keep it all afloat long enough, your career would take off and you could be the safety net. He said the word with so much shame. Safety net. My entire life defined. But here's the part you don't know, he said, taking a shaky breath. The part that I'm most ashamed of. He looked me straight in the eye. Clara knew. She knew how bad it was with David for a long time before she ever told us. She was the one who came to us, crying, manipulating us into helping. She played on our fears. She knew we were draining our retirement, and she let it happen. It wasn't just David's failure. It was her deception that truly ruined us. That was the final, devastating twist. It wasn't just that Clara had accepted the help. She had orchestrated the whole thing. Her selfishness wasn't passive. It was an active, destructive force. It recontextualized everything. Every tearful phone call. Every dramatic plea for help. It was all a calculated performance. The news should have made me angrier, but strangely it didn't. It just made me sad. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the one that showed the true depth of the dysfunction. I looked at my father, a man stripped of all his pride, and I saw not a monster, but a flawed human being who had made terrible choices out of a twisted sense of love and fear. I accept your apology, Dad, I said, and I meant it. But you have to understand, things can't go back to the way they were. Forgiveness isn't a magic wand. He nodded, tears running freely down his cheeks. I know, son. I don't expect it to be. I told him that if we were going to have a relationship again, it had to be a new one. One built on honesty and mutual respect, not obligation and guilt. There would be boundaries, hard ones. No more financial bailouts. No more last-minute demands on my time. He would have to get to know me, James the man, not James the utility. He agreed to everything. When he stood up to leave, I stood up too. For a moment, we just stood there in the quiet office. He didn't move for a hug, and neither did I. It was too soon for that. Instead, he extended his hand. I took it. We shook on it. Two men making a fragile, tentative peace. It wasn't the warm, fuzzy reunion of a movie. It was real. It was a start. And for now, that was more than enough. A year has passed since that day in my office. A year of slow, deliberate rebuilding. I'm writing this from a beach. Not in Costa Rica, but a small, quiet cove a few hours up the coast from LA. I'm here with Sarah. Not Sarah from my old office. It turns out her meddling was part of a failed attempt to sabotage me for the promotion. A detail that came out later and cemented my decision to keep a professional distance. No, this is a different Sarah. A woman I met in my hiking club. She's smart, she's funny, and she loves me for who I am, not for what I can do for her. She's down by the water right now, laughing as her dog tries to play tag with the waves. My relationship with my family is a work in progress. We don't do big Sunday dinners anymore. Instead, I'll meet my dad for coffee once a month. We talk about sports, about work, about my life. He's getting to know his son. My mom and I are still finding our way. The conversations are often stilted, but she's trying. She sends me pictures of the grandkids, but she no longer asks when I'll be coming over to see them. She waits for an invitation. Clara and I have spoken on the phone a few times. The apologies have been said. We're still navigating the vast, cratered landscape of our past. Maybe one day we'll be real siblings. Maybe not. But the toxic dynamic is broken, and that's what matters. They are surviving. They are learning to stand on their own 2 feet, humbled but perhaps, in the long run, stronger for it. My phone buzzes. It's a picture message from my dad. It's a selfie of him, my mom, Clara, David, and the boys. They're in a public park having a picnic. They look normal, a little tired, a little worn around the edges, but genuinely smiling. There's no pretense, no show. Just a family making do. I smile, a genuine, uncomplicated smile. I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel resentment. I feel peace. I put my phone away and watch Sarah walking back up the beach. Her smile as bright as the sun. I had to lose the family I thought I had in order to find myself. And in doing so, I opened the door for a chance to build a real one, on a foundation of truth and respect. My life is no longer a shadow. It's mine. And the horizon looks beautiful from here. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I truly hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to draw a hard line to protect your own peace? I'd be honored if you'd share your own experiences in the comments below. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Your support means the world.